year was 1919. On April the 13th, the British Brigadier General Reginald Dyer ordered his British India troops to open fire on a group of innocent civilians, killing at least 400 of them, and 1,200 people were injured. This was the first case of reported police violence in India. An NGO consortium confirms that at least 5 people died as a result of police brutality in India. And in the year 2019, an estimated 1,731 people died in police custody. Recently, a father and a son were mercilessly killed by the police in Satankulam, Tamil Nadu, which shook our country. The main reason for police brutality is that there is no effective policing of the police force in the country. The police force falls under the state list under Article 246 of the Indian Constitution, which gives powers and freedoms to the state government to enact laws to govern the police force of each particular state. However, India is a quasi-federal setup, wherein the central government also has the power to enact laws pertaining to the police force. Indian Police Act 1861 is a central statute that governs the police force throughout India, and most states have adopted this enactment or have enacted similar enactments modeled on it. In the past 3 decades, several initiatives have been taken to bring in reforms in the police force in India, which culminated in the decision of the Supreme Court in Prakash Singh versus Union of India, which deals with 3 broad aspects of the police force, which is autonomy, accountability, and efficiency. The Supreme Court, in its judgment, directed the state government to establish a state security commission to ensure that the police are protected from illegitimate political interference, and it also established the State Police Complaint Authority. It also directed the state governments to establish a police establishment committee in order to handle matters relating to postings and transfers. Another reason for increasing police brutality is a lack of training provided to the police force in terms of human rights violations. We also have a culture of the public cheering police brutality. A cop who is angry is perceived to be more honest and upright. This is often portrayed in Indian movies as well. We also have the problem of preconceived social biases, wherein discriminatory tags based on religion, language, and caste are assigned. For example, a person who is from a particular community or a person who speaks a different language is often judged. We also have a problem of procedural lapses. For example, when a person is arrested, he has to be produced before the magistrate within a period of 24 hours. In some cases, the time of arrest is wrongly entered. The magistrate also has the duty to find out if any violence has been inflicted on the person who has been arrested. This is often done in a very hasty manner. It is also true that in most cases that the person who is arrested is under pressure from the person who has arrested him, therefore making him unable to open up before the magistrate. Today, we have with us a renowned lawyer, an ex-state public prosecutor, Mr. B T Venkatesh, to share his experience and thoughts about police brutality in India.
The question simply here is that where it comes from is the whole, you must go to the history of the whole system. So the police were introduced by British. What we have today, police force, is a British legacy. So they introduced for their efficient administration. So one of the major aspects which they wanted to look was that question of the very construct what we have today in police department. The 2 sections. One is law and order, and other is crime investigation. This is crime branch, law and order branch, traffic branch, all of that. So these are law and order and crime are bunched together, and the traffic is separated. Now the whole construct of the police force that was introduced by British was to see that, keep that fear of law in the minds of the people. I think it's not the protection or maintenance of law and order, it's predominantly fear of law that was to be kept in mind. In fact, it is something which I've been hearing as a child, that because I was hearing accounts of police from my father's days, or pre-independence days, my mother's days. It's scary even as on this day. Why? Now that it was scary in 1930s, 1940s during the height of freedom struggle, understandable. Why in 2020? 70 years of the Republic. I think somewhere we find that we have not grown beyond this kind of colonial structures in the police department. We have retained we have Code of Criminal Procedure, which is a robust law. Absolutely, I don't have any disagreement with that. I have great respect for this Indian Evidence Act, which is mandates it. The act has some degree of protection from this police. They wanted, in fact, when they gave the kind of wide powers to police, British wanted to have some kind of restrictions on their own police. There is a very interesting reading that why do you want that every statement made before a police officer is inadmissible in evidence, section 162 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. So when the debate happened in the parliament, why should we have created this police force? In the British parliament discussion was that when we have created ourselves police force, why do we have such kind of a thing? The lawmaker then told the British parliament, you see, the police in India, the kind of powers that we have given, would make it impossible. None of these fellows would ever investigate a case. They would pull down a fellow, put chili powder into his eyes, and commit him to the crime. Anyone whom they can lay their hands on. I think that's the kind of policing that happens. Therefore, there is this law needed that any statement made before a police officer is inadmissible. Now, when we talk of this, the British were aware of the abuses that could happen in the police department. Now, when you say in the first part of your question, saying that there are 1731 cases of instances of custodial deaths in India, now that speaks volumes that the suspicion, the fear that was expressed in British Parliament almost more than a century and a quarter ago holds good even as on this day. That's something which is true. Why this happens? That's the question, second part of the question which you talk in terms of why this happens. Why this happens is not because of the mental disorder. I disagree with that kind of a thing. Maybe there are very rare instances of mental disorder. The very construct of impunity is large. So, for example, I tell you, when you go to any majestic or market in Bangalore, any place in India, the policeman comes and he collects money from these constables. A small constable, he has that kind of thing. And if they don't pay, they would just pull the carpet with all the artifacts and then destroy that, kick him, and do that. In fact, we have been working with sex workers for decades now, and sex workers who are soliciting in public. The question is this: street soliciting is common for the street-based sex worker. That's something which is not uncommon in any city in the world. So the moment they see that they are picked and they're taken to police station, beaten up, sometimes used. So the kind of thing which happens is this comes from the construct of impunity. That I am here, I have been invested with such powers that I can do what I want. And this is universal in this particular country. Not only in India, it's also universal. It's a common phenomenon in the Commonwealth, especially developing part of it. Whether you go to Nigeria, the same story. Whether it's South Africa, it's still worse story. Whether it's Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, or any part whom we claim to be democratic countries. For example, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and Indonesia, all of us claim to be countries which are republics, space, and all those things are available. I'm just giving you the South and Southeast Asian perspective. When you look at this situation, we have this law and order, which is also all of them follow the same penal code and same procedural laws. Yeah, we normally we think that it is Indian Penal Code and Code of Criminal Procedure in India. No, it's the same procedure in Pakistan, same procedure in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, or any place in Southeast Asia, wherever British colonies were there, they follow this law. In Thailand, it's not there, but in Malaysia, it's the same penal code and penal laws.
Yeah.
If you look at, in fact, we did get to this kind of thing when we were fighting against Section 377. We found that Section 377 is the same Section 377 in all the countries.
Yes.
I was in a state of shock. How come it's the same number too? Because except that it was changed, nomenclature was changed into Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Malaysia. Nothing changed. The rest of it is the same kind of thing. Maybe a cosmetic change here and there. All of them have retained because this law is something found to be quite comprehensive in its nature. So that speaks volumes that the whole policing crime had been put in a frame which is going to be a power which is vested, where they are entitled to degrees. They can summon people, ask questions, do things. In fact, while except that their admissibility of their evidence is removed, the rest of the things give you phenomenal amount of power. In fact, that has been the case strengthened even in the present UAPA Act. And if you look at the 43F of the Unlawful Acts Prevention Act, it says that if the notice is issued to you to come and give evidence on a particular aspect regarding the case, if you don't come and give it, it's a punishable offense, cognizable offense with 3 years of imprisonment. So the power which we are vesting is that over a period of time, they have put so much power into the police that gives them the power of impunity. I think if you were to look into the kind of cases, what is exactly the convictions? In fact, when you look back in the first part of your question at 1731, custodial deaths, you also need to look at one part that's very, very important. That is that how many have been prosecuted. In fact, I had this statistical that maybe you would have already done that research on the NCRB statistical data. 1%, no one has been convicted in these cases. It's a shocker. In fact, I was looking at 2015 cases, 2013 statistics, which said there were 5,390 plus cases registered against police for violation of rights. And all this was custodial death and other things in every kind of thing, extortion, abuse, assault, custodial death, any of these things are concerned. And if you look into the aspects of how this particular 1731 cases are done, they say that good chunk of cases that would go to show that they committed suicide. Some of them would say that no, they died in the hospital because of the previous injuries, or that it was an accident and all that. In fact, when you look into the custodial death, in fact, 2015, only 3 cases were reported to be of custodial death. The rest of them were not custodial. 5,394 cases, somewhere 100, nearly around 80 to 100 custodial deaths in the police custody. 3 were said to be the custodial deaths. The rest of them were not. And none got convicted through. So the question here is this, that the impunity which comes from the power of the law is also strengthened by the system where there are no prosecutions whatever the crime you commit. That's something which is very common. So we come across this as lawyers, as judges, we know this. We come across on a day basis and we have little to change this kind of thing. So therefore we see that the impunity which exists in the system is that system. I don't agree with the aspect that it's meant to do with the kind of mental health issues. I don't think that. It may be kind of thing which is put forward through a Singham kind of stories, which is a film kind of story which you come across. We get to see this kind of police officer, very honest police officer, indignant police officer, very straightforward police officer who finds its system is corrupt. So therefore he takes upon himself. So he does all acts, he justifies his lawlessness. And we all clap and come say that, okay, he did something good. And that's the narrative. And you belong to this generation. In fact, when I was young, the police in films used to be very different. Police in films used to be someone who comes at the end of the film, and when everything is over, he only comes and says, asks the hero that whatever happened, he said that these guys did it. Okay, I have to pick him up and go. That's all. He has a very monosyllabic or a two dialogue, and police, if you are a police actor donning a police role, you will be doing only three or not more than say a minute or two of space you get in the entire 2.5 hours of film. Now that's the kind of thing which we had. From thence to that, you see the change which happened, showing that the police being corrupt. In fact, great number of movies which came in the 80s and 1970s, 80s, 90s, right from the movies, I don't know name of the cases, Ardh Satya kind of thing, wherein that police officer, some of these officers have been shown in very poor light, that the corruption which is their ranks in and the lethargy that is that particular thing, and how they succumb to this political pressure. So that was demonstrated in this movie. So police was from that of a end game person who just a fleeting presence to that of a corrupt fellow who is also in hand in glove with the villain, that kind of a thing. Then subsequently it moved to a situation today that police characters are becoming something of a nature where he is a hero. Why these changes happen is that there is this general failure of the system, of the accountability in the system, the corruption levels have so gone high that we look at somebody who can be a messiah. So this messiah concept comes in the police. So therefore the police officer in Hyderabad who shot down 4 accused in Priyanka Reddy's murder case. Priyanka Reddy, if I don't know me, if I may misplace the name, excuse me, but in her rape and murder case, they arrested 4 persons, a driver and 3 cleaners, someone who was working with him, and took them in the early morning and shot them. The question here is that how could a driver have any idea of using a firearm? How could a cleaner, wildest of dreams, could use a firearm? How could the 10 policemen being there with him could not control these guys picking the gun, being handcuffed? All of us lawyers know that how we take these accused to decide. They come all the way to the court in handcuffs, and it's only in the when it's being produced to the court hall, the handcuffs are removed and presented to the court hall. The moment he comes out, handcuffs are put in, and if it is supposed to be a terrorist case, the moment he is arrested, right from beginning to the end, he is always in the black mask. And that's how we create kind of hype and all that stuff. So this is something which is the case. How could he do that? And we eulogize that person, and he puts a gun like this and gun toting and says that he has done something extraordinary job. He is a hero. How could he be a hero? Killing some 4 guys who had no clue regarding what a gun is, and say that justice is done. No, justice is done is something. You see this. In fact, when I had an interview with the television on that particular aspect, I was trolled. I was so trolled badly that the person said that you are a most dangerous criminal. You support rapists. Not the police. Policemen did not say it. The media said it. And I saw so many people criticizing me, known persons, acquaintances even, in this particular thing, but none of them talk in terms of process of law. No one respects process of law. Now this impunity which we talk in terms of is built in. In fact, we have this attitude among us even today. Where this comes from? As in a situation, you get into a situation that somebody has assaulted you and you lodge a complaint, police arrest him, and you have a request to me. So beat him up so badly, he should remember for life. So he is beaten up. He is beaten black and blue. And I have seen persons being hanged in police station with their hands tied to the window, with the feet not touching. How it is, you are virtually being stretched. And whether the police have this kind of powers, the 3rd degree is something not uncommon to them. That some of the policemen are civilized and all that. In fact, there is I was a state prosecutor. There was a statement in police department. The one who can't do this 3rd degree will be transferred to the traffic section. Because he can't handle the crime is concerned. And I come across this kind of thing because the system is built on that kind of things. Though the police department, police reforms have been talking about it themselves, not that I am talking, the department itself has been talking. We have been done training programs on that number of occasions. We have discussed with the police officers number of times. what you see is this, that the impunity which reigns is something which is very common. So therefore, you cannot make a statement that it's something to do with mental disorder. I don't agree with that. It's predominantly because we have not changed the police system. We continue to have the same police system which was created by the colonial masters, which was for their perpetuation of their power. There is nothing called perpetuation of power now. It is an elected government.